We are going to talk today about what we call internally version 12.15, so that's the next Surpass release that is coming up. And we've got a few sections, quite a lot to cover today, haven't we, Tom?
Yeah. So we're going to start with looking at the new improvements to tasks. There's a lot of development that's gone into tasks recently, and because tasks is still in beta, we're going to start with a little refresher before going into looking at the new editing functions, the information panel, and the final decision function for managers.
Okay, after that we've got item authoring improvements, yeah?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at new options for rationale and negative marking. And your favourite, Ben, the new Caliper tool.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the Caliper tool and showing it off to the Surpass community. We'll get on to why later, I won't spoil it all now.
Yeah.
Following on from that, just a quick one on survey sections.
Yeah.
That's part of the test creation process, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we'll move on to source material improvements.
Yeah. So we'll be looking at native PDF and HTML source material support in HTML secure client.
Yeah.
And then looking at grouping PDFs and attaching them to an item, and then interactive bookmarks and contents. Yeah.
First of all, we're going to look at the tasks. And you said you wanted to give us a quick refresher on this, didn't you, Tom? So I'll let you go straight into that.
Okay. So tasks are a way for you to manage your team's workload in Surpass. You can assign jobs to be done in the system. You can track progress and set deadlines.
Yeah, okay, so it's a bit like for anyone out there who's already using, say, Asana or Basecamp or Trello, you know, there's lots of other task management tools out there that different companies use. However, this is all built directly into Surpass, isn't it? So you know that you can open Surpass, you go to your tasks tab, and then everything that your employees need to see who are working on that exam cycle, it's just in there.
Yeah, and there are two types of tasks. So you have general tasks, which are just general administrative tasks like go in the system, do this job, come back. And then the main bulk of tasks is in the reviews task section, where you can assign an item list to be reviewed by a set of reviewers, and they can go through it on an item-by-item basis and vote on the item's quality.
That's great. Okay, so let's move on to the first big one, which is being able to edit tasks.
Yeah, so going into Surpass now, after we've created a task as a manager, we're in the manager screen at the moment, we now have the option to edit a task. So we can edit tasks that are in progress and not started. A completed task, we will need to mark as incomplete before we can edit it, and that sends it back to one of the previous statuses. So to edit a not started task, we go to edit task, and this brings up the edit task window. And you can see that there's a variety of fields that we can edit. So here, we can edit the name, we can edit the description, we can change the list to review and refresh list. These are for review tasks. So this would be the predefined item list that you say, okay, I want you to review this list of items. And then the refresh list option allows you to check if any changes have been made to that item list since the task was created. Okay. So it basically means that your reviewers are always getting the most up-to-date version of those items.
Yeah, so your reviewers might not necessarily be in the same office, and it's part of that whole collaborative working thing, isn't it? You can log on to Surpass from anywhere in the world, but everyone's always getting the most up-to-date information via the tasks.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can also change who's assigned to the task. So before the task starts, you can add task members, you can remove them, so you can rearrange it if you make a mistake, or if new people join the team, or if the scope of the task expands.
Yeah, I mean, exam cycles can span months, if not years, so that's a really good feature to have in there.
Absolutely, and because the task hasn't started yet, we can change the start date, and we can also change the end date. So we can expand or contract in both ways, as much or as little as we want.
Okay.
So that's for a not started task. For an in progress task, we have less options to edit because obviously the task has already been started. People are registering results in the task, so we don't want to change the playing field while it's live. So we can change the name still, and we can change the description, but we can't change the list to review for a review task.
Okay, so you can fix typos, that kind of thing, or if a department changes name or something like that.
Absolutely. So it just means that everyone is working towards the same items.
Okay.
But we can change who's assigned to the task at this point. So if you have new team members join,
Yep.
you can add them here.
Great.
Because the task has already started, we can't change the start date, but we can change the end date, which means that we can extend the deadline if necessary. And we can, as a manager, now come into an expired task to extend that deadline if, for instance, something happens beyond the control of your team and the deadline expires. The manager can then go in, extend the deadline to give them more time to do what they need to do.
Yeah, I think another good example of that as well is, if you set the deadline and then your team are writing right up to that deadline, you as a manager want to make sure that you've got time to review the task properly. You don't want to be kind of chasing them to the 11th hour and then having to squeeze all your work in last minute, do you? So that's a really good addition there as well.
So the end date and the deadline is mainly for the assignees. Because as a manager you can go in afterwards, it means that you have the freedom to work past that deadline.
Yeah.
So so that's editing tasks. So we're now going to switch over to the an assignee's perspective in tasks. So this is what it looks like in a review task. Okay. So here we have the item as the candidate will see it. We can see the breadcrumbs to the side here. This is the items in the review. Yeah. So we've got 6 items to review. And we have these voting buttons at the top. So these voting buttons are essentially a way for us as reviewers to register our opinion of this item. So we can choose to reject it if it's not good enough. We can select advise if we think it needs amendments, or we can approve it, in which case we're saying it's suitable for testing. So the main addition to 12.15 is the item information panel down the right, because whilst we can see the question as the candidate can see it, as an item reviewer, we're actually looking at all of the settings under the hood as well. Yeah. So if we go into item settings, for example, we'll be able to see the marking type, for example, to make sure that it's set to computer mark or human mark as it's meant to be. We can see the number of marks assigned to the item and the correct answers. This is not something that you'd necessarily see in the main screen, and it's certainly something that the candidate wouldn't see. But as reviewers, we need access to this information in order to say, okay, we approve of this. Yeah. Okay. So that's the item settings panel. Underneath it, we have the item tags panel, and this shows all tag groups and tag values assigned to the item. We've got some sample ones here, and this is default and custom tag groups and values.
And I think that this really reaffirms what we were saying before. It's not just about whether the question itself is right or wrong, it's about whether it's suitable for the rest of the workflow in that exam cycle, isn't it? So, yeah, it's really important to have all that kind of information in.
Absolutely. So the next one along is item enemies. So an enemy item is an item that hates another item so much that it will never appear in the same test.
Yeah. Just to clarify, we also have friend items or item sets, as we call them in Surpass, but some people refer to them as friend and enemy items. Don't they?
Yeah, so it's generally if you have a question where the answer gives away something else elsewhere in the test and you don't want it to be in the same test. Here you can see any enemy items currently assigned to the item. So you can make sure, if you know, for example, this is meant to be the enemy item for this item, you can confirm it here.
Yeah. Okay, good to know.
Yep, the post-it note icon underneath shows citations. So citations are more for internal use. So if an item author is creating an item and they refer to a piece of literature, for internal audit purposes, you may want to record that. So citations are where you'd record it, and we've got a sample one here. And this will be able to be seen by members of your organisation. It won't be seen by candidates. Yeah. And finally, we have candidate feedback. So this is something that item authors set that could be seen by candidates if the setting is enabled in test creation and if it's a formative test, like a low-stakes learning test.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Okay, so just to summarise, I mean, what we've got on the screen there, and I think we should pay a bit of homage to our UI team as well.
Absolutely,
Our design team here are working painstakingly to make sure that everything in Surpass kind of is intuitive and flows through from the item authors right through to the test creation, then the actual delivery and candidate experience. So it does replicate the preview item perfectly, doesn't it? And then with the numbers down the side and the use of the traffic light scheme for reject and approve. Yeah. It looks fantastic. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the icons down the side. Is there anything else you want to see in review tasks?
Yeah.
this is, as always, an evolving thing. So moving on, we're going to look at what we call the final decision. So basically, all of the reviewers have had their input, and then it comes to one person with authority to actually make that decision on whether the item goes through or not. So the reason behind this, I suppose, is that things change. Some people might have a level of authority that gives them information others aren't privy to. Maybe a question type is not going to be included on next year's exam cycles or something. So even though the task was right at the time, things change. Somebody needs that authority to say, yes, this is definitely in, out, whatever. Yeah,
and it's just also useful because if you've got a review pool of say 30 or 40 people, and they're all given different votes, and some of them have different levels of expertise, some of them are more reliable than others.
Of course,
You want to be able to have someone to go through all of that information and say, this is what the decision is going forward. So when the manager comes into the item review screen, they will see the review results here. On this little bit up here.
So using that traffic light system, again, it's nice and quick and easy for them to see.
Yeah, you can see at a glance that, okay, we've got 2 approved votes, 1 advised vote, and 1 reject. And if the task manager wants to see the comments that the reviewers left when they made these votes, they can select the icon here. And again, this is color-coded, so you can see at a glance that this is an approve, and this is just sample text. But you can see who did it, you can see what they wrote, you can see when they did it.
The item version, everything, all the information you need in there.
So, from a manager's perspective, you can internalize all this information and decide what you want to do going forward. So, I'm going to make a decision on this item. You select decision to open this window. And even though we have 2 approved votes, I'm going to say reject. Because I've noticed something that the 1 reject voter has noticed, but these other people haven't.
Yeah, his Latin text was really convincing.
Yeah, he knew his lorem ipsum. So, because these we have 2 approved votes, the manager doesn't have to follow that consensus, which is handy because it's not very democratic, but it's very utilitarian.
Again, that thing about having more information than the reviewers, things change. So it may be that actually he's not rejecting it because it's wrong, but it just isn't relevant anymore. Or
and the thing is, you can't reject it on a whim because you have to give an explanation here of 4,000 characters or so, and you have to give a comment for every single voting option.
That's a maximum 4,000 characters, isn't it?
Yeah. So item is not suitable for testing. So, and this will be saved as a comment against the item in item authoring. So the original item author can go back and see at a glance the final decision of the task and the explanation why. They won't see the reviewer comments that I was just looking at a minute ago. So this is essentially a filtering process. So the task manager's duty is to internalize all this stuff, process it, and come to a fair decision at the end. And as a result of this, we can change the workflow status. So this item is currently set to live. Because we've rejected it, we don't want it to go into a test. So we're going to set it to withdrawn. And this is good because it means that we don't have to go back to item authoring, find the item. If there's numerous revisions of the item, we have to find exactly which version it is, or they go through bulk update, all that kind of stuff. It is literally that.
Yeah, so the choice is yours what to put in there. I think that's the key thing, is it's choice. However, this would just streamline workflows.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Massively.
Majorly.
Yeah.
And you select confirm and that registers it, and then the item will be, the workflow status will be changed, this comment will be saved, and the final decision will be registered. And one thing to note is that once final decisions have started to be made by task managers, the reviewers won't be able to go into the task at this point and start changing their votes. So to show you what an example of that in action, we're back on the reviewers screen now, and we can see that we can't access this task because the final decision has begun. So once the decision-making process starts, all of the data is locked in. So the task manager doesn't have a changing playing field. Yeah, that's final decisions. I think it's
Great, okay,
really
so
nifty.
I think a lot of people are going to find that really useful.
Oh yeah.
Let's move on, and now we're going to look at item authoring, starting with rationale for multiple choice questions.
So rationale is a way for item authors to record their reasoning behind answer options in multiple choice and multiple response questions. So here's a sample question. And you can see we've got the rationale buttons here available. To activate these, you go into additional options and select show answer rationale,
Okay.
and then they'll appear. So to add rationale, it's really simple. You just select it, type with basic formatting tools, and click save.
Yeah.
And you can delete it from here as well.
Right, okay.
And you can add rationale to each answer option. And we've got a maximum of 10 answer options for these question types. Yep. So it's a way for you to ensure that if you're writing an item and then it's going to be reviewed 6 months, 12 months later on, that your reasoning behind choosing this answer and these specific distractors is kind of preserved. Because at that point of the process, you may have moved on to something else. The person reviewing it may not have the same knowledge as you. So it's a way of just recording your reasoning and making sure that that is preserved along with the item.
Yeah, so I think a good example that I heard of this was, things change sometimes. Well, the new journals come out, scientific discoveries are made. So, for example, planets and planet classification, we might have a question about, which of these is a planet, and it says Pluto. And I think, well, Pluto's a planet, I learned that in school, that's the right answer. And then you might come along and review that and say, well, actually, I can't remember how long ago it was now, but it was declassified, and then was it reclassified again, maybe?
Something weird like that.
That's an example of how these things work, isn't it? So, it's not just for whether the item's been reviewed, but actually, why is the item still in an exam? If that item is in someone's test and they're reviewing it before it goes live, and they say, hang on, where's that question come from? Actually, the rationale is that at the time the answer was correct.
Of course. So there are two ways to view rationale. So we can view it within item authoring as we are now. So you can just click on these. Okay, I'm viewing it, and you can go on to the next one. Okay. Or, because I know some people still like working on paper, we can export these to a Word document. So if this question is in a test, you can use the test menu here to export items to a Word document.
Right, okay.
And this is essentially what you'll get. So you'll get the rationale against each answer option in a very clear format. So if you can imagine you're doing a review of your test and you've got 20 people in a room and you distribute these on paper, so it's a way that everyone can see it.
Making sure everyone's got exactly what they need in front of them. Like I say, a lot of these Surpass Community do still work on paper when they're in large groups. We still, as an industry, deliver a lot of tests on paper, don't we? So it makes sense. Just on the element of security there, because I know that this is something that came up in earlier discussions, it is still secure, isn't it? The Word printout can't be done by anybody. That has to be done at a certain permission level. Yeah.
So this tests menu is, even though it's showing an item authoring, the permissions that allow this to be visible are actually tied to test creation. So I'm seeing it because I've got all of the permissions for this instance, but an item author who only has the role to write or edit will not see that unless they have test creation privileges, which in most cases they won't. So the people who are creating the tests will be able to do this, but the people creating the items may not necessarily have that ability.
Yeah, so that audit trail is covered for the people with the responsibility, are the ones that hold that secure responsibility.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on to the negative marking now for multiple choice questions, multiple response questions. So this is tied into weighted marking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which has existed for quite a long time in the past, but the negative is new.
Yeah, so you've been able to do weighted marking for a while, in which means that rather than having correct and incorrect answers, you can have a degree of correctness, if that makes sense.
So, for example, you might be able to do something, but there's a better way of doing it?
Yeah, so if you have like a multiple choice question, one answer might be worth 3 marks, another might be worth 2, and so on and so on. What 1215 introduces is the ability to insert negative values into the weighted mark. So to activate weighted marking, we go to additional options and select weighted mark from here. And this changes the radio buttons to numerical entry fields. So we can put in, okay, this is correct, so it's worth 1. This is incorrect, but we want to punish the candidate, so now we put -1. Before, the lowest we could go was 0. Yeah. Now, the lowest we can go is -999. Yeah. So effectively, this is a process of disincentivizing candidates from guessing, because it could, it end up with a negative mark, which will then
and the whole exam can have a negative mark, can't it? It doesn't just bottom out at 0 there.
Yeah.
So I suppose a good example of this would be something like, you know, if we were engineering or electrical, as you might have, there's a safe way to do it with the minimum, there's the best way to do it where you've considered everything, and then actually there is a very wrong way to do it which could result in serious injury or death. I mean, you need to make sure that if someone's choosing those very wrong options, that, you know, that is reflected in their marking.
Yeah. And even to go back to your previous example, if we were having a question about the planets, we could have Pluto as a negative mark because it's not a planet anymore, so we'd want to kind of disincentivize.
If you're a physicist, you should really know that.
At least you'd hope so. Yeah.
Okay, so next up we've got additional formatting options for the HTML source material. We're not going to go into a demo for this because it's quite straightforward. You can see on my screen we have a slide. We've had a lot of positive feedback from the source material. You may remember the last webinar we showed you an example of a newsletter that had been drawn up with images and things in. And we've had people come back and request things like border styles for emphasising certain passages of text, special characters, that kind of thing. So again, it's one of those features that we're just going to keep building on. As people request different things, we can add them in there. That's all I'm going to give time to on that, because I'm really excited for this next feature, which is the Caliper tool, as you said earlier on, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 2 reasons that I'm really excited about this. The first is that it's the latest in a long line of really useful tools that look great, but are also helping to make the exams that we deliver a lot more engaging for candidates. So stuff like high fidelity image viewer, diagram creator tool, spreadsheet question type. You know, we've got all these amazing things that help us make more real world exams.
Yeah.
But the Caliper tool is also the first project, you might say, that has come directly from the involvement of our accessibility team.
Yeah.
Here, and again, we had an accessibility webinar not too long ago, but this is one of the tools that was mentioned then, and we're ready to show that. So I'm going to let you do the explaining, Tom, on how this works, and then kind of maybe talk a bit about why this is considered an accessible tool for examinations.
Yeah, cool. So we have a sample question here, which is essentially asking the candidate to measure this little grey area here. It'll look bigger in delivery. This is just for preview.
Okay.
So the Caliper tool is a digital measuring tool that allows candidates to take measurements directly within Surpass. So if we wanted to add the Caliper, we go to Add Tools, and we can select the Caliper from here. And from this drop-down menu, we can select the default unit of measurement, and we have quite a bit of choice. So we can choose from centimetres or inches, pCas, pixels, points, and twips. So it's very versatile.
Right.
For this question, we're going to stay with centimetres, and we're going to add tool to item. And at this point, we can edit the name of what the button will show to candidates in delivery. So if we have, for example, primary school children doing a test, they may not know what a caliper is.
Yeah, they know what a ruler is, though, don't they?
So we can change it to ruler.
Okay.
And so let's have a look at what the caliper looks like in delivery. So here's the question we just created. The question is asking us to measure this grey area here.
Okay.
Select the caliper, and here it is. So we can click and drag to move it around, rotate it, and expand and contract the measurement jaws.
All right.
So if we grab it here, there we go. It's as easy as that. If we want to make really fine-tuned incremental movements, we can select the little slider buttons on the left and right, or we can do incremental rotations, clockwise and anti-clockwise, or we can choose to reset the caliper using this button here.
So it is a really accurate measuring tool as well.
And we can change the unit of measurements on the fly. So it's currently set in centimetres, but we can change it to inches, for example. And the really interesting thing is, so this is currently at 6.9 centimetres. If we switch to inches, it immediately converts it.
Yeah, I was going to say I was having a play with it earlier, and I noticed that So you could use it for conversion tasks or any kind of, you mentioned earlier as well about using it to measure pixels, for example, of, you know, how big is this font and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How will that translate from screen to print, for example?
Yeah, exactly. And going to the accessibility side of things, the Caliper tool is completely keyboard accessible. So I've just tabbed into the slider now, and you can see that I'm controlling it with my left and right keyboard buttons. I'm not touching my mouse, and I'm able to move it again just from using the tab key, the arrow keys, and the enter button.
Fantastic. That really is great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Fantastic tool. We'll move on to survey sections. So this is actually a new section for us, isn't it, the survey section? We've had survey question types before.
Yes.
So you could ask people, where are you taking this test? How long did you travel to get here? That kind of thing is quite useful. But this allows us to take any item type, doesn't it, and apply it to a survey section. But also there are much more important implications for how the candidate sees the surveys within the test, isn't there?
So the survey question type, as it's currently defined in item authoring, functions as an item in a test, so it contributes to the progress bar. So if you can imagine a scenario where a candidate is 10 minutes left in a test, he has a few questions left, they can see that they're 80% through the test, but they don't necessarily know that the last couple of questions are survey questions, so they're not going to contribute to their score. There's a potential there that they may rush that final question, which isn't ideal, which is why we've introduced these new survey sections. So a survey section takes any item type in a HTML delivery, converts it to a survey item, and then puts it in a section which is compartmentalized from the test, in essence. So that scenario won't happen now. So the candidate will always know how far they are in the test with respect to scored items. And the progress bar will reflect that.
Yeah, so unlike unscored items show as part of the test, or can show as part of the test, can't they? So this is kind of similar, but have their very own unique purposes. Yeah,
so if we look at the test window here, we can see that we've got 3 sections in this test. And this section in the middle is actually a survey section. If we try and add a new section, we have the option to choose between a standard section and a survey section. So if we have a test of 60 minutes and we choose to add a survey section of 65 minutes, the test is still 60 minutes long. The survey section is 5 minutes, but that's removed from the test. So if a candidate runs out of time, they're halfway through the test at 60 minutes, they will still be able to go directly to the survey section. And likewise, if they enter a survey section in the middle of a test, the test timer will pause. And I think we can show that now.
I was going to say, let's have a look at that.
Okay. So this is that test with 3 sections we were just talking about. So here's the first section I'm just going to go through. And as I'm going through, keep note of the section progress bar and the test progress bar. So I'm going through the test. Each time I'm attempting a question, it's registering and the progress bar is increasing. Okay, so we're about to come to the survey section. So you'll notice now that the test time has paused.
Right, okay, so they can click on that to...
Yeah, they can toggle between the survey section and the test timer using this button up here. So the survey section is ticking down from 7 minutes and 15 seconds. The total test time is frozen. And you'll see that the progress bar for the survey section is showing 100% completion. That means that it's not going to contribute to the overall test progression shown up here on the top. So when I attempt these survey questions, you'll notice that the progress bar doesn't progress. So as a candidate, we know that these aren't scored items.
Because you will have done a practice test, or you could have had a notification in the introduction to the test to explain all of this.
We do recommend that test creators put an information page explaining the behaviour of this. So I'm about to finish my last survey item. So you'll see that the test time is frozen. The survey time is ticking down. If we switch back to the test time now and leave the survey section, you'll see that the test time starts again. And when we attempt these questions, the progress bar is
Great. That really is quite clear, isn't it, for the candidates? So
very clear.
They're not going to be sat there stressing, thinking they've got only 5 minutes left to answer a 20% of the exam. And that kind of thing.
So it's really, really helpful and really intuitive.
Great stuff. Okay, so we're going to move on now to our final section of the day. We're looking at improvements to the, well, not really improvements, but source material features that we've included in Surpass now. So a lot of this is based around PDFs, isn't it? Looking at native support for PDFs and HTML source material. Yeah,
that's in HTML Secure Client. Okay. So now if you're running a summative assessment in Secure Client in lockdown mode using the HTML driver, you can now use the PDF viewer and HTML source material. So if you've got case studies or reference documents that you want them to use, you can now use them in HTML Secure Client. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward there, isn't it? It's a piece of information. Moving on to something that's a bit more exciting to demonstrate, PDF grouping. Now, it's basically what this allows us to do is attach multiple PDFs to one item. It makes it look a lot nicer in candidate delivery, but we can attach up to 60 PDFs. Is that right? Yeah, okay, so this isn't just about knowledge recall and having a bit of open book, although it could be used for that. This is about big analytical questions. You could have lots of sources of data and you have to draw from all of those and then kind of gather everything together. It's been put together using the PDF reader built into Surpass, so it's really intuitive to use. Let's have a look. Okay, so you need to be working in a HTML subject for this to work because you need to be able to import as a shared resource PDFs. So I've got quite a few PDFs in this media library at the moment. I'm just going to add a few more because why not? So I'm going to add the rest, and these are just going to upload to this subject's media library. Okay. Once they've all uploaded, I can then select them all and choose to group them.
It's that easy. Just select all.
It is that easy. Just select them and then group. And at this point, you can rename it. You can double click to enter it, and here you can remove any. You can keep on adding them to them. Okay, so you don't have to create a new group like if one of those went out of date, you wouldn't have to create a new group altogether. You could just go into that group and amend it. You just delete the item, And adding it to an item is just like normal source material. So this is the item that we're currently working on. We go to the source material, and there it is. And
all the information that's in it as well.
So you add it using this. I mean, we've already added it to this item, but if we were to add it from fresh, this is where we'd add it. Okay. So looking at its behavior and delivery, we're now in HTML Secure Client. So this is the PDF group button. So straight away we can see, I mean, that used to be stacked, 60 individual. So that would push the answer options off screen. It's not ideal for candidates. It's real enhancement to the candidate experience, I think. So you'd select it to open the PDF viewer, and it opens the first one automatically. To change the PDF, you select the bookshelf icon, and you get a drop-down list of all of your items. And select it, it loads. It's very quick. Okay. So that's the PDF grouping. Really great. And that still works exactly as the PDF viewer did. If you just had an individual one, you can go into like number 52 and highlight it, and then go back to number 2, then go back to 52 again, the highlight's still there, and all of your interactions will persist. So if I go back to item 1, it's probably going to go to a different page. It's on chapter 4. Because I scrolled down to it. Okay. But there is something that we're about to talk about that gets around that as well, isn't there? The jumping around different chapters. So should we move on to the interactive PDF content and bookmarks? So at the moment, if you create a document in Microsoft Word and you set it up with a table of contents and then you export it to PDF, in the PDF viewer, it'll highlight like this if there are internal links. So, okay, I want to go to chapter 1. It highlights yellow, I click on it, it jumps immediately to that part of the document. If I want to go to chapter 4, for example, I can choose to either scroll down like this, or I could go back to the first page and go to chapter 4. So this functionality is great if you're on the first page, but if you're halfway through the document, it's a bit tricky. So in 12.15 we've got a new feature in the sidebar, which is the documents outline. And these are the bookmarks that you can set up in your PDF software, so something like Acrobat. And this persists as the candidate scrolls through the document. So we're on chapter 3 at the moment. If we want to go back to chapter 1, boom, we're there.
Just click that.
And we go to chapter 5. So if a candidate is having to cross-reference something within a document, they have this really quick way to navigate through a document. And of course, we have a really quick way to navigate through a bunch of documents.
Yeah, so it's not just convenient, but it saves time as well, critical time on.
It's a massive boost to efficiency, I think. But yeah, really intuitive again.
Great stuff. Right, I think we are coming to the end of our session today, Tom.
Yes.
So I hope you've enjoyed your first foray into the world of webinars. But everyone at home wants to know, when can I actually start using these features? You've shown me them, they look great, I want to get my hands on them.
Yep.
We are expecting the next release of Surpass week commencing the 13th of August, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously the release emails that always go out will be coming to you when it is actually ready. They come from the documentation team. They will have some excellent technical documentation attached to them. Of course, if you're already a member of the Surpass community, you can get in touch with your account manager or your contact here at BTL. And the webinar will also be made available should you want to watch it again or share it with your colleagues. You can go to btl.com/surpass/past webinars, or just go to btl.com and then find it in the main navigation. And then we have the learning portal as well. The learning portal will have all of the technical videos. So the webinar is a bit more of a quick and ready run through with the technical videos. We'll actually explain how to use the features.
Step by step.
Step by step. So again, get in touch with your account manager if you want to know how to access the learning portal. So all that remains is to say thank you very much for listening. I've been Ben Brady. This is Tom Wardock, and we will see you again in the near future.
Thank you.